If Gotham was anything at all, it was cleverly cast, especially when it comes to this pre-Batman's Rogues Gallery. Because I started this series a couple years back now, and I still find myself making these video essays, talking about how great each actor playing each antagonist is. And somehow I'm still not running out of material yet. My point being is that there were plenty of near-perfect portrayals, but at the very top of that list was the show's Ra's al Ghul.
I'm the demon's head. I am Ra's al Ghul.
I think he is.
Actor Alexander Siddig really brought the character from comics to life. Aesthetically speaking, point blank, when compared to all the actors who've stepped into the role, this version looks the most like the villain. A lot of the time when Ra's al Ghul is translated from on-page to on-screen, his appearance gets lost in translation. Instead of his classic costume, a much more generic look is favored. And to be fair, they usually seem within the realm of Raz's attire, but they're toned down or just not quite right. But that's not the case this time around, because they make the character's wardrobe feel as ancient and as mystical as he is. Outside of his attire, his general appearance also matches the character's as well, which shouldn't be a surprise as this is the first time a Middle Eastern actor was tasked with stepping into the role. Which seems strange when considering the character has almost always been depicted as being of Arabian descent. I think on this basis alone, Gotham's take on the character is already a lot closer to his comic counterpart. I mean, look, they even gave the demon's head the right haircut. Look at those horns. However, aside from the awesome aesthetics, this was far from the only thing this portrayal of the big bad had going for it. As a matter of fact, he kinda ticks all the boxes you'd want to see in an adaptation of the antagonist. As we already covered, he looks the part, he certainly sounds the part. The manner in which he speaks is like that of a man who has lived many years, lived many lives. Someone who is next to being omnipotent. He doesn't ask questions, he gives answers. He makes statements, sounding at times like an evil dictator, and at other times like an all-knowing mentor. Even the most basic of interactions with him can come off like well-rehearsed speeches. He has an answer for everything, and a story that comes along with that answer. It's like the evil version of the Dark Knight's Alfred.
I'm thought to be a demon. I have been alive more years than you can imagine. But I have seen and done things that would shape the core of everything you believe.
I had a vision of Gotham in flames.
A cataclysmic event soon to befall this city. A cleansing fire that will destroy, purify, create. You shall become the demon's head. The League of Shadows will be yours to command.
This Rage is very articulate. He seems educated in most manners, though his knowledge doesn't feel like it's been learned from textbooks, rather than it's come from first-hand experience. Looks the part, sounds the part, but most importantly though, he acts the part. The actor approaches the antagonist with all the confidence in the world, acting as an overly experienced, otherworldly figure walking amongst man. He's crafty, he's cunning, he's charismatic, and yet despite this, he's not solely defined by this. This Al Ghul is not evil incarnate. Surprisingly, he has a wide range of emotion. He can be desperate, he can be depressed, he can be personable, he can be likable, he can almost be vulnerable. Now this may sound simple, but more often than not, this character winds up being evil eternal exposition villain. So seeing a Rage with range is a nice change of pace. And the best part of all of this is that he could be all of these things and still stay in character. Never once does it feel like a betrayal to this portrayal. Everything he does is all well within character and not something other iterations or adaptations got to show on screen. So I think it's worth mentioning all that was asked of this actor and just how authentic he managed to be. There's a real mystique to this version of the villain that I just don't think is present in other performances. And that's of course due in part to the characterization of this character this time around. His mystical backstory, while altered, is still part of his blueprint, and therefore ingrained into the performance. In spite of what his title and nickname might tell you, this Ra's al Ghul isn't exactly a demon. And his immortality isn't depicted as a gift, but rather a curse. He seeks out Bruce Wayne seeking death, a death at the hands of his successor specifically. Now this was always a staple of the duo's dynamic, but here that needed transition is tied to tragedy. because Rage is asking Bruce to put an end to his pain, to stop his suffering, and to take his place in doing what he believes is right. The show showcases the very complicated relationship between the leader of the League of Assassins and his pupil-turned-opponent. Rage never holds any animosity for Bruce Wayne. Even when they stand on opposing sides of the battlefield, he only ever expresses disappointment with the young man, and maybe annoyance at Bruce's refusal to become his protege. But he doesn't treat the someday Batman with hatred or with malice. Even when Rage turns against him and sides with those that oppose him, he's only doing so in an effort to push Bruce further into the darkness that will create Batman. He's desperately trying to mold the man into the myth, or at least his idealized version of the idol. Even in his final moments, Rage doesn't hold any resentment toward his rogue protege. Instead, he uses his last breaths to give the junior detective advice, guiding him on his journey even when he's at the end of his own.
I have walked this earth for centuries, but for all my years, all my travels, there is one thing that I have never found, a true heir. Only you can kill me.
Accept your destiny. Become Gotham's Dark Knight.
The tampering with character in terms of age on the show did complicate some previously established lore, but I think that this relationship is one of the few cases where the change in age actually helped the dynamic rather than hindered it. You see, there's always going to be a giant age gap between the hero and the villain, just because this villain is literally hundreds of years old. But the character always appeared to be a midlife man, as is Batman. So because of this, you can't really visually see the difference between the two. But here, the gap in age, and more importantly, life experience, is always evident. They really aren't standing as equals. Even past the visual aid, the age difference between actors complements their arc. Rage wanting to set Bruce up as his successor earlier on makes a lot of sense to me. He sees this young man as a diamond in the rough. His potential replacement is a mine to mold. So having him approach Bruce before he even becomes Batman means that he's trying to give him a path rather than sway him from a path that he's on. I truly believe head and toes this is the best Ra's al Ghul performance. This was really well done. From the casting to the creative, from the choices that were made behind the scenes to the ones that ended up in front of the cameras. While other versions of this villain might be a little bit more iconic, I think this one is the most accurate and, just for me personally, the overall greatest. The actor gives a complicated and nuanced take on a character that is so easy to write off as being two-dimensional. This villain is honestly one of the unsung heroes of the show, and it's, in my opinion, one of the greatest performances on a series filled to the brim with great performances. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying every aspect of this character was picture perfect. Performance aside, I do think there was the occasional odd creative choice made. There were definitely some questionable storylines that the character wound up in a short but meaningful time on the show. Like having the Demon's Head take up Barbara Keene as a possible protege and love interest? Yeah, no thanks. I don't like that. It just feels a little bit goofy and beneath this character. Likewise, his working relationship with Joker number 2 was also a bit strange. Just feels like the Demon's Head would know better than to partner with such reckless people. You would assume that he'd be smart enough to not factor loose cannons into his plans. And there's also the time he showed up at the GCPD with a Clark Kent-esque disguise. That was a very odd choice. And the decision to turn the term the Demon's Head into a transmittable power just feels incredibly cheap. Barbara being his successor once again feels dopey, and him actually having a hard time dueling Jim Gordon's ex-wife, well, it just seems laughable. But even with all that in mind, it is still this portrayal I think of when I think of the Rogue. I think the absolute worst part of this performance is that there wasn't more of it. The fact that this actor didn't have the chance to play the part on a grander scale or for a longer period of time. Still, as for now, and for the foreseeable future, I think this is by far the most accurate and just overall awesome Ra's al Ghul fans have ever gotten. So that was Gotham's Ra's al Ghul, and if you liked this video and would maybe want to see a video on more villains from the show Gotham, Like, I don't know, maybe one on the show's Bane, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
Gotham was yours for the taking.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.